It's all here. News, weather, traffic, and community events. Ryan and Lisa, mornings on CFAX 1070.
So sometimes we're reminded that on the east coast of Canada, where there's also a lot of ferries, there's a lot more federal money to help fund those systems than you find here on the BC side. And is that something that needs to be addressed? That's what my next guest is talking about. Gord Johns is a member of parliament for Courtneay-Alberni. He's with the NDP, and he's joining us right now with ferry funding on the mind. Sir, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, and hello to everyone back home on the coast.
Yeah, great to talk to you about this because we've been hearing about this for years, it seems like, but right now this is in the news. I think there's a petition being organized by an Nanaimo resident on this. So let's get into this issue. And maybe we should start with just explaining why there's a discrepancy between the East Coast and us here when it comes to federal funding for ferries.
Well, that's a good question. That's the question we're asking. Is that this is outdated. It's based on constitutional agreements dating back 80 to 150 plus years ago, and the BC Ferries, BC government and federal government agreement that dates back over 50 years, since 1977. These are agreements that were actually, the agreement we had with Canada from 1977 wasn't a fair agreement, and that agreement is clearly outdated. The population of Vancouver Island has doubled. The coast has skyrocketed in terms of population, and the ferry users has exploded. So, right now the agreement is that we get far less per passenger and far less per capita than the East Coast, and it's based on the fact that the ferries on the East Coast, the reason they were initially given extra funding is because of their connecting provinces. But that argument doesn't hold water in today's modern era. Vancouver Island's got the same population as Nova Scotia, pretty much, more than New Brunswick, more than Newfoundland and PEI combined, and we're constantly being ignored on many different issues, but certainly the ferry issues comes to mind, and it's an urgent issue because we know that BC Ferries is currently looking at their performance review coming up this fall, and they're citing that we could see a further increase of rates of 30%, which would have a huge impact on our economy and on the way of life and, on coastal residents.
So this petition I mentioned that's kind of getting some steam, it had some numbers included, and I'll get you to react to this in just a second, but it says that according to the Library of Parliament and some numbers that they provided, BC Ferries received approximately $1.63 in federal operational support per passenger. So that's kind of the per person amount, $1.63, compared to about $291 for the same metric for the East Coast ferry systems. That's not just like a small discrepancy. That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And when you look at Marine Atlantic, it's actually even worse. They get, over $500, per passenger. And it's about 300-fold, that they're getting in terms of subsidy. We don't think that we should be taking away funds from Marine Atlantic or Atlantic Ferry Services. Absolutely, we believe that the federal government should be supporting them. What we want is fairness and equality. On the East Coast, it's absolutely essential, ferries, for connecting communities and connecting provinces and communities to the rest of Canada. But so is it for Vancouver Islanders, people in Haida Gwaii, North Central Coast, Sunshine Coast, and people in the Lower Mainland that come to the island and back, and the Gulf Islands, of course. So, we know this firsthand. Hey, I remember being a kid, and it was less than $20 for, our family to go to the mainland and back. And we used to go over, frequently. For every holiday, we went over and visited family. Well, I was talking to my mom the other day, who lives in Victoria, and she says it's been over a decade since she's gone to the Lower Mainland. So, this is kind of the barrier that we're seeing for people on the island and in our coastal communities. And again, this subsidy is unfair. And when we look at the per capita basis, again, it's terrible. Per capita, we're getting about $6 to $7. They're getting $125 per capita. So, this is about equality and fairness, and that's all we're asking for. And a formula that is outdated that gets modernized, and we're not going to let up.
Well, if you have any thoughts on this, you can text us at 71010. Do you mind holding on the line, by the way?
No problem.
Yeah, because I'd like to keep talking about this. So that's just the issue, just reminding everybody that this exists. And now there's this petition by a Nanaimo resident trying to make some change, or at least, garner some attention on this. And I'd like to ask what you're doing about this in Parliament, too, because I got NDP Member of Parliament for Courtneay-Alberni Gord Johns.
Mornings on CFAX 1070.
Oh, so many people weighing in on this issue. Texter at 71010 says, learning of the ferry subsidy discrepancy is mind-blowing. Add on that BC Ferries doesn't have a frequent traveler program from Vancouver Island to the mainland, and it's no wonder we're feeling it in the wallet. We're talking about this with Gord Johns, NDP Member of Parliament for Courtneay-Alberni. Thanks so much for holding on the line and talking to us today.
Yeah, no worries. This is a really important issue to all of us. I mean, this is significant timing with the PT7 process and the review that's coming up, and future fare pressures and service challenges will be central to that review, obviously. And so renewed federal provincial funding and a new agreement, a modernized agreement, is absolutely critical. It's not sustainable for British Columbia to continue carrying such a disproportionate share of the burden for infrastructure that serves our essential transportation needs. I mean, we don't have a choice as coastal communities on how we're going to commute back and forth to connect us to Canada and North America.
So what's happening in Parliament? We kind of mentioned there is a petition in Nanaimo, started by a Nanaimo fellow who's trying to get some awareness of this. What's going on in the House of Commons when it comes to this issue, as far as what you're trying to raise?
Yeah, so first we developed this petition together with Cameron Leckenby, former BC Ferry worker, who's a long time been an advocate and concerned about the cost of ferries and certainly the unfair playing field for the federal and provincial contributions on this. And so we've got an e-petition running, I think 7474. People can just Google federal ferry funding e-petition and they can get on board. We need them to sign it. We need to send a strong message to Ottawa. I created a written petition on the same language as the e-petition, literally went around my riding last weekend, and I had not a single person not wanting or willing to sign the petition. So collecting written petition signatures, that I only need 25 signatures. I can rise in the House. I already have. I've already got one certified, been up in question period. Did a late show last week where I dragged the government in late at night. I'm dragging them in tonight, likely going to be around midnight because we're doing late night sittings. But I'm going to come back and force them to debate this issue again. And I've written a letter to Gregor Robertson, the Federal Minister of Infrastructure. And, we're using every tool and every lever we've got to put pressure on the government to modernize this agreement so that we get federal ferry funding fairness for coastal people.
Is it as simple as just saying, hey, just, what you've done in the East Coast, do it to us? As far as, the amount, is it as easy as that?
I do believe it is, because Mark Carney proved that last year. July 25th, he announced that he was going to decrease ferry costs for Marine Atlantic by 50%, and August 1st, that commitment came into play. So it took him 6 days to implement a significant contribution to ferry users on the East Coast. He could do the same on the West Coast, and I mean they continually use every argument they can to say that they're contributors. Well, they're contributing 3% to the overall cost of running BC ferries. On the East Coast, it's 43%. The provincial government here in BC is contributing 24%. So, I mean, the unequal share is real. And when we look at some of their responses, they say, well, we supported you through COVID, but so did they with all of the Atlantic ferries to the same amount. When you look at per employee and overall supports, they contribute hundreds of millions of dollars. Then they go and they say, well, we're giving you a loan through the Canada Infrastructure Bank. Well, loans welcome, but it's not a subsidy. It has to be repaid by ferry users. And when you look at the loan, the financing agreement that'll save, in terms of interest costs over 25 years, that equates to about $26 million annually in avoided interest costs. But by comparison, when you look at East Coast ferry systems, they receive hundreds of millions of dollars annually in direct federal ferry operating costs and capital support. So I'm not saying the interest savings aren't helpful, but they're not the same as ongoing federal funding when it comes to operational costs for ferries. And we want fairness, and that's all we're asking for.
Texter at 71010 says, I currently have 2 ferry reservations in July for a car and 2 passengers on the East Coast. The one from PEI is about $45. That's car and 2 passengers. And the one from North Sydney to Newfoundland is about $95. So I guess just trying to give an example in real dollars what some of these discrepancies are. And that sounds a lot cheaper than here.
Yeah, you look at the ferry from Newfoundland to Sydney, and it's about the same amount of time as it is from Haida Gwaii to Prince Rupert. It's about $313 for a family of 4 to go from Haida Gwaii to Rupert, and it's $53 for a family of 4 to go from Newfoundland to Nova Scotia. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. This has a huge impact on, in terms of our economy, on people's, way of life. And, right now, we're facing severe service reductions or increased costs if we don't modernize this agreement. This is critical to connecting communities. Like I said, it's an essential marine highway, connects workers, families, businesses, truckers, supply chains in our communities to the rest of Canada. We pay the same amount of taxes federally in coastal British Columbia as they do on the East Coast. This needs to be revisited.
Gord Johns is the Member of Parliament for Courtneay-Alberni with the NDP, and as you heard, he's going to be bringing this up in the House of Commons again as he's trying to make the case that, hey, federal government, why don't you give BC the same ferry subsidies that you give to the ferry systems of the East Coast, which is, as we learned, massively more than what we get here. Thank you so much for walking us through the issue. Can we follow up if you get any progress on this? I would love to talk to you again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll be pushing hard. Again, I want to thank the province of BC. I mean, they invested $500 million to keep ferry fares low. They increased service to 10 routes, and made it easier for seniors to travel Monday to Thursday, as by relieving their costs. But I mean, the province can't sustain this. They need federal support. I'll be pushing for that tonight and tomorrow and the next day.
Well, one last text, just because it's fun. Texter says, the population of PEI is only like 150, and don't they have a bridge too?
Yeah, so, that's it. They even have connecting routes that are getting subsidies. So we can go on forever about this. The unfairness is it's so crystal clear. There is no genuine argument that this agreement doesn't need to be modernized.
All right, we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thanks so much for having me.